What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to another Pay-Per-Viewpoint edition of the Smark Out Moment Smack Talk podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tony Mango, joined as always by Callum Wiggins.
Hello.
And Robert E. Felice.
Hello.
And as usual, you know what we're going to do here. We're going to break down everything that we think is going to happen, all the spoilers, all the predictions, all that good stuff for the WWE Survivor Series WarGames 2024 pay-per-view coming up this Saturday afternoon. I say afternoon because it's starting with the countdown at 4 p.m. Eastern, and the actual card itself will start at 6 p.m., so we got a full 2 hours worth of talking before we get into a 5-match card that's going to be filled with some talking in the meantime. So we're going to talk about it.
It's one of those war games we'll have a lot of talking.
We got 5 matches to break down, and as always, we not only are going to say what we have to say about all these things, but we want to know what you have to say about them. So drop your thoughts in the comments section below on YouTube, or if you are listening to us on a different type of platform, then by all means, voice your opinions on that. There are plenty of different ways for you to do that. Of course, if you are on Facebook or Twitter or any of those kind of fashions, then you can just, send a tweet or do whatever you do there. If you are on Discord, hit up any of those channels on there. Keep in mind as well that if you are on YouTube, though, then make sure that you hit the like button on this video. Double check you are subscribed. Ring that notification bell. Get that email alert for when we go live for the post show immediately following the Smart Guy Moment. Immediately following the Survivor Series pay-per-view. I'll be doing my usual live coverage. You'll have a usual run-in immediately afterward with that. I'm assuming I'm probably going to be doing that one on my own because Rob's usually covering the press conference and Callum's usually not watching the pay-per-views. But if, by all means, something changes, then we'll see. Maybe I'll do something a little bit different if I can figure out another means to do it. I don't know. Tune in. That's why you can find out. And of course, if you are clicking around and you're doing all the good stuff there on YouTube, then double check that you can join the YouTube channel membership as well. And if you click on the join button, you'll get access to the same stuff as the Patreon, the same stuff that you can find all the usual stuff like the Darkcast, the Pick Your Poison tier and all. There is a Darkcast that is a bonus one for this month that just was recorded at like 1 a.m. of what if it was Raw versus SmackDown versus NXT for Survivor Series. We got some other Darkcast material coming up in the next week or so, and we'll see how that all pans out. But if you join that, then you also get potentially early access for anything if we record something and we have it scheduled for the future or something. So benefits on that, helps us out a great deal. Also keep in mind that you can help us out by picking up merchandise, and it is all indeed on sale on Redbubble and TeePublic right now for A Mango Tees, Fanboys Anonymous, and Smark Out Moment. I still haven't put up any of those election-based things. Partially because I was like, maybe I'll wait until a little bit closer to January or something, but also just haven't had the time. But, if you want to pick up some of the more pro wrestling related stuff, you'll find that obviously on Smart Out Moment. Take advantage of it while you can. I think that there's something like 40% off. So now it's the best time to get anything along those lines. And of course, we're going to come back around and tell you about some more stuff in the future. But, that's plug season out of the way for right now. Let's start getting into the pay-per-view itself. So as I said before, 5 matches currently announced. We already know what happens on SmackDown, and tonight's NXT and of course AEW, the next things we're going to be watching, have really no bearing on what this should be. So I highly doubt that anything is going to change, and that already seems like that's locked in. They have 5 matches and 2 of them are WarGames matches, so they're going to take quite a bit of time. I think that they've probably not had more than 5 matches on Survivor Series for the past 3-4 years or so. So I highly doubt that they're going to change anything, but you never know. I mean, there could be some late breaking kind of announcement that they put out on social media or whatever. I was surprised at how they announced one of these matches. The United States Championship is on the line. LA Knight against Shinsuke Nakamura. They didn't announce that on SmackDown. Instead, on Raw last night, when they were running down the card, Wade Barrett's just like, oh, and breaking news, by the way, this is a match that's on the card. And, it's better for them to do that than to just announce it on Friday on the pre-taped episode of SmackDown. So I appreciate that. We had the opportunity of talking about it now instead of saying, I don't know, maybe they'll announce another match and whatever. But yeah, I would have thought that maybe they would have just announced it last week. Nevertheless, Shinsuke Nakamura popped up 2 weeks ago, he attacked LA Knight, and then he had a little video package promo thing, and that's it. That's all you need. He gets a title shot anyway. So I'm assuming that LA Knight's retaining here. I don't have a whole lot of faith that they are suddenly renewed with this Nakamura push. I think they just reached a point where they have been like, oh, he hasn't been on screen since April 22nd. Let's just bring him back and have him be fed to LA Knight. Nakamura has won multiple different mid-card titles. None of them have really been a great title reign. He typically would win it, and then they would forget about him. It's a slightly different regime with Triple H more in charge now, but we haven't really seen Nakamura get like, okay, now he's getting the star treatment. I'm pretty confident LA Knight's just retaining here. And I think this is going to be the most like swallowed up, forgotten match on the card.
I would like to see Shinsuke win, just because I'm at the point where I'd like to see something else happen with that U.S. title. Yeah, but you're right. Nakamura doesn't usually get the star treatment. That being said, they can switch things up and start to pivot to babyface challengers for the U.S. title. Nakamura wins. But still, if I'm going with like a guess for Fantasy League and an on the record thing, I'm going to say LA Knight probably wins.
You heard it first. You said Nakamura.
I would love that. I would love to be right if I said Nakamura.
I mean, Nakamura's in a bit of a interesting position now because it's obviously just come back. I feel like the build was kind of weird for this because they essentially put LA Knight against like a member of the Guardia del Fantasma defending his title, and then had Nakamura attack him, and then the very next week had LA Knight defend the title against someone from the Guardia del Fantasma and have Nakamura attack him afterwards.
Yeah.
So basically just repeated it like twice in a row. I wonder what they're going to do this week. But at least we know that. At least we know that's not the case. But I think the more interesting position with Nakamura is the kind of the budding relationship between WWE and Noah, which is like kind of started last year with a couple of NXT guys going over to be part of their N1 tournament, and got this guy from Noah that's shown up in NXT. I don't think he's had a match yet, as far as I'm aware.
No.
But,
No.
But
I mean, he might end up having one tonight for all we know. But
and Nakamura went to have a match with was it Muto at some point?
Yeah, last year.
Yeah, last year. So he had one of like Keiji Muto's final matches before he retired. So
and then AJ Styles had the match this year.
Yeah, with Marufuji. So I think so that's kind of where Nakamura is right now. And maybe him being the US champion would be a benefit of that, because you could have him go over to Japan, be part of one of their big shows, defend the US title there, and then you get a bit of buzz off of that as well. So this is definitely a new regime in terms of their openness field. I mean, you see the number of WWE guys and NXT guys that were on the Bloodsport show this past.
Yeah, that was fun.
Last weekend as well. And then obviously a lot of AEW people in it as well. It's just crazy to just see that like Bloodsport seems to be the neutral ground for all this stuff. But so maybe him holding the US title could be an interesting part of that. So kind of wait and see on that front. But the likelihood is that LA Knight will retain, because it just feels very sudden. Just give the title to Nakamura, especially when you had the opportunity to give the title to either Andrade or Carmella Hayes the last time around, who felt like they're more permanent fixtures of what SmackDown's been recently, and so not putting title on either of them, and then just a month later just saying, okay, we're just going to put it on Nakamura. He's back, and we're immediately going to give him the title. It doesn't feel quite right. But then again, I wouldn't be shocked in any way, straight shape or form, if they gave the title to Nakamura. But I probably will go with LA Knight to retain. It just feels like the safer bet.
I would say if they do end up switching this over to Nakamura, then I would be legitimately just shocked, because it would kind of come out of nowhere for me. Stranger things have happened, but I just have like zero inclination that that's heading in that direction.
I think the fact that it would come out of nowhere is actually making me feel like it's more likely that it will happen. Just because, like, if because they built up the series between Kamala Hayes and Andrade, yeah, and didn't pay that off in terms of one of them winning the title. So it wouldn't surprise me that you do all that, and then the next guy comes along who's been out of action pretty much all year, and he's the guy that wins the title. But that's not. I'm not saying that's a bad thing to do. It helps establish Nakamura immediately, especially if you have plans with him for the next little while to give him the title belt. And it's not like LA Knight's held that title for quite a while now, so it wouldn't be like the most out there thing to have him just drop it. So I'd put like, you know, I'm probably on about like a 60-40 at the moment for Knight retaining.
Here's hoping we get a surprise, because Knight, I'm over it, and I'm sure I'm the only one. That's okay. Like, I'm just over what he's done with this belt, and I'm ready for new things.
I wouldn't quite say I'm over it, but I would say he's lost a lot of steam, and I don't know if that's because he's not like in a position where he needs to be fighting against things, and it's that perception of, all right, well, now he's won the title, so we can give up on like championing him, or if it's a matter of them just sort of dropping the ball with his title reign. Like, he really didn't do much with this. He's popped up quite a bit, but he's mostly been kind of a heel in a weird way. Like, fuck you, I don't really want to defend my title against either of you type. And, so, you know, it's an odd booking that they've done with him for the past year.
I had made this statement specifically in relation to Knight while watching with a couple of friends this past Friday, because Michael Cole said something on commentary like, oh, he wants to be a fighting champion, not like the last guy. And I was like, all right, tired of this we can only tell two stories thing, where it's either guy never defends and brags about it, or guy has a bunch of mean matches and tries to brag about it. Like,
workhorse or lazy. It's two default modes.
We need something else. I'm not confident Nakamura would be too much of that something else, but I can hope.
Yeah, and I mean, there could be a reason why they've kept Nakamura away and then just suddenly decided to bring him back. Maybe it was a matter of like, and what the weird thing is about this is he wasn't fully away. He was wrestling on house shows here and there. Like, he's had a bunch of different matches with LA Knight recently. He had, I believe it was the Bash in Berlin tour. He was wrestling quite a bit against like either Cody or somebody else. I don't know. So it's like they were using him. It wasn't that he was injured. He just wasn't
it could be
on
as simple
television.
It could be as simple as AJ Styles got hurt. Who can fill the AJ Styles role?
Yeah.
In a similar vein? Maybe Nakamura.
Yeah. It could just be that. So whatever like method to the madness that they're bringing him in for could very well just be, you know, something along those lines. But it seems like we're all going to go LA Knight on that one. And we do have another mid-card title match where it's going to be a triple threat for the Intercontinental Championship. Bron Breakker is defending against Ludwig, Kaiser, and Sheamus. This comes about from the Monday Night Raw thing that we just saw yesterday, where the three of them started brawling with each other, and Adam Pearce did his whole, enough, that's enough. You know, all three of you are going to fight. And, yeah, I had said something in the post on Smark at moment of like, this isn't some kind of like a slow burn feud. It's a feud that's gone on for a long time, but they haven't made it like such a big forefront, constantly beating you over the head with it type of thing, that it's quite annoying. But it has reached a point where I'm like, all right, I've seen Sheamus and Ludwig Kaiser fight enough times that I would like them to move on. And I've seen Bron Breakker involved in some tangential stuff with everybody that, like, I really don't want to see this lead to a separate thing with Bron Breakker and Ludwig Kaiser, or another separate thing of Bron Breakker and Sheamus. If Sheamus were to win the Intercontinental Championship, and I do want him to win it at some point, then okay, but I don't want him to win it right now. I want Bron Breakker to actually have a title reign with this, because they already had him drop it once. So to me, this is as straightforward as Bron Breakker retains, and, you know, they all have a good couple moments here and there throughout the match. Should be fun, but it should be pretty straightforward to me.
Well, I like that we're getting this match on pay-per-view. This feels like something that any other month, maybe where there's a Cody Rhodes match that takes up that fifth spot, this becomes the Raw match. So I'm glad we're getting it on a pay-per-view. I think they're in a position where nobody is really a bad choice to win here because Breakker could have a longer run. Sheamus is dying to check off that IC belt, and it could push Kaiser and say, hey, Ludwig Kaiser, we're going to give you a chance to make a statement with the IC title. I like the way they presented it. It's been logical enough where, okay, these dudes, they all just want to make a statement. They all just want this belt. I said this, I think it was on Blue Sky, where my favorite kind of wrestling is where everybody's just sort of mad at each other and wants to win championships. And that's what this is. So works perfectly for me. But gun to my head, I think I'd say Breakker retains. But honestly, wouldn't be surprised if anybody won this match.
I think the likelihood is the Breakker will retain. I think it would seem a bit odd to have it dropped in a triple threat match, especially between two guys that he's kind of been feuding on and off with in singles competition. Hasn't really had a definitive win over either of them because they both ended in disqualifications. So probably needs to get the definitive win over one of them. I imagine that he'll pin Kaiser because that's kind of what Kaiser's role is, to be there, to be the guy that takes pins for Gunther and now to take pins in this match so they can protect that one-on-one Sheamus match for a little bit longer. Yeah, I mean, I know the whole story with Sheamus is about like him never holding the Intercontinental title, and so eventually you imagine they will pay that off, but I just don't think that'll happen in this context. So, yeah, I imagine that like Breakker will retain. I think it'll be a good match. All three guys involved are really good, so I'm sure they'll put together something that's very hard hitting. But yeah, this doesn't feel like the right setting or environment to have Breakker drop his title.
Not only is it a little too early, it's just, this is the setup if they were to do that, like just a triple threat. And if you do that to keep Breakker looking strong, then what do you do with him next out of that? Because they had teased that random thing with Gunther and immediately didn't follow up on it at all. And kind of want to make him like both tweener, babyface, heel kind of capacity. They don't seem to really want to fully go into like, all right, Bron Breakker is definitely still a heel. He's a complete asshole character. Yet at the same time, they still do the whole, a bunch of dogs in the arena tonight. And you're like, all right, so you want people to cheer for him, but you don't want to book him as a babyface. And I guess that's their idea of like, maybe we don't want people to get sick of him and not cheer him. Let's make him quote unquote a badass, which I think is so cringy. That's the nickname that they go with for him. Yeah, the badass, whatever. It's like Mr. Cool Awesome,
Hey, work for Billy Gunn.
Bump. Yeah, it does work for him. I'm not digging the way that they're doing things with Breakker on that front, but I do think that a strong win here isn't going to make a big difference either way, but it at least won't hurt.
Yeah, I kind of like. I'd say I'm not watching like a lot right now, but like I appreciate the presentation of Bron Breakker in being like that. He's just there to like anybody who wants to step up, he'll just take on. Like he's not aligned one way or the other. He can switch any point in time, but it doesn't feel like they're not picking. To me, it doesn't feel like they're not picking a for him. I think that's a deliberate thing to be like, oh yeah, I'm just here to kick people's ass, and that's what I'll do. So
he's very much the engine of, whether you want to call it Hogan era or Attitude era, just that over the top macho attitude of like, I'm just gonna beat ass, and he looks like he can do it, and he can actually do it, and I think he's going to be a huge deal as long as he stays healthy for the next several years to come.
And this is very much like Scott Steiner's presentation during WCW, and don't get me wrong, that WCW period where Scott Steiner was doing it was absolute like trash, but
He was one of the better things on this.
Yeah, he was the most over thing on all of that stuff. So anything that Scott Steiner did was like pretty must see TV. So I feel like they're trying to do the same thing with Bron Breakker.
We'll find out if he walks away with that Intercontinental title. I'm assuming that this is going to be one of those matches that they kind of put sandwiched in between some of the other things. I kind of feel like they're probably going to start off with the women's WarGames match, do either the US title or the IC title, do the Gunther Priest match, US title or IC title, and then men's WarGames match is kind of the layout that I'm thinking. We're not going in that layout right now, but whatever, doesn't matter. So Gunther versus Damian Priest. This is for the World Heavyweight Championship, and this is a follow-up from the original title switch where Gunther beat Damian Priest. So they're coming back around to it. I think that it's kind of interesting that they kind of looped back around in the way that they did. Not exactly what I would have done, but it's fine. And Damian Priest has been in a position it's not great, to be perfectly honest. Like, they kind of did drop him a little bit, and then they sort of tried to reheat him. But I think it's still fine enough. And he looks like he would be a credible challenger, but not to the way that he's going to have almost any chance of actually beating Gunther.
I think, well, to your point about the actual finish of the match, I don't think he has too much of a chance of winning, but I actually think the presentation of Damian Priest has been his best presentation yet. It feels authentic. He seems like a legit badass. The whole thing is working for me in terms of how they're presenting him. It's just that they're not ready to give up Gunther yet. But this has been Priest's best work in WWE going into this match.
I've seen people talk about a bit of the Priest presentation. To be fair, I might have fallen into that trap a little bit as well about the heaviness of this kind of push and the fact that he seems to be getting Gunther's number at each possibility right now. But then again, you have to create a strong challenger in order to make the title change seem even faintly believable. But they're kind of leading into a bit more of a story about Gunther maybe downing himself a little bit after the loss to Cody and all that stuff going along. I think that the fact that we'll talk about this a little bit more when we get to especially the women's WarGames match about people being booked strong. I think there's a generation of fans, and I saw Ibu at Wrestle Purist mention this stuff, so shout out to him because I think he's absolutely right that there's a whole generation of wrestling fans that have been brought on the fact of over pushing somebody, and that's kind of a lot of it leans into the John Cena stuff. And the fact of the matter is that that's actually how you get people over, is by having them beat up everybody over and over and over again. Because that's how Steve Austin got as over as he did, and how The Rock got as over as he did. Because The Rock was actually probably accepted to Raw because he was super charismatic, and so he could just pretty much lose as often as he did do, but stay super over. But Austin, all he would do is just he would probably take a loss every now and again, and then would just show up for the next 3 weeks and beat up everybody that handed in that loss in the first place. I know, Tony, that for you, that was part of your reason for walking away from wrestling, but obviously you were very much in the minority.
Yeah.
And
it worked for most people. They were give me more Austin and give me more The Rock constantly and nobody else other than those two. And yeah.
It's just so the whole era has kind of grown up with things thinking, oh, this person is over pushed, because the more that you see behind the curtain and you're not looking at the guy or girl in particular that's being pushed, you just look at, oh, there's other people that are being overlooked because of it.
Oh, by the way, and Callum and I are of the same age range and fandom, but overlooked doesn't always mean that means they need a shot, because that means that they're really, really, really good and deserve a shot to be amazing, right? We grew up in an era where, it was Rock and Austin being pushed over a lot of guys, but you did get the Kurt Angles, the Edge eventually got in there, the Benoits, the Jerichos, and that worked out for them. but that doesn't necessarily mean that, I don't know, that suddenly one day we're going to wake up tomorrow and like Otis is going to be a great world title competitor. Like, I think this has been Priest's best presentation because he is actually beating everybody's ass. I like seeing him do that. He's not afraid of Gunther. He's stepping up to him. It just feels genuine.
I kind of just, my mind casts back to the match with Dominic Mysterio, where he lost that match and then beat up Dominic in the Judgment Day afterwards, and the crowd were kind of booing him after that, and that's kind of part symptomatic of this thing, which is if someone they feel is being overpushed or being like presented super strong at the expense of a lot of other people, then that person becomes the bad guy in a lot of fans' eyes, which is like, everybody has their right to whatever opinion they want to have in that respect. But I feel like like Rob says, that this is a presentation of Priest that can make him a long-term main event guy, rather than the kind of flash in the pan that he probably could, and in many people's eyes think that potentially should have been, because he won that world title, got his cash-in moment, and then, had his decent, your typical WrestleMania to SummerSlam run that every single world champion in WWE has at one point or another. But yeah, this is, in order to have a sustainable duration at the top of the card, then you need to have this kind of presentation. So that's good, that what they've been doing with him, and he does feel more authentic, and he is bringing a lot more of like who he really is into it, rather than this kooky Judgment Day bullshit.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think that. But yeah, Gunther's obviously going to win, and as I say, I feel like a lot more of the story is leading into the story of like Gunther having lost to Cody at Crown Jewel, and not feeling probably at his fullest or his fullest confidence, that this will be like the moment for him to try and overcome the doubts and get the victory, which I know is not really a heel thing, but it's kind of just his own personal journey of like, oh shit, am I as good as I say I am? And this guy is calling me out and thinking that I'm better than, like, calling me out and saying that I'm good, but maybe I'm not as good as I think I am. And so we'll probably see a lot of that being played into during the match as well. So,
and I mean, let's call a spade here. Some of these people are the same people who are like, I don't want to see Priest beat anybody up. I don't want to see Cena be the guy to beat Gunther up. I don't want to, like, they don't want to fucking see anything, And I mean, yes, the internet is not a entire representation of the entire fandom, but sometimes it's just like, Jesus, you don't want to see shit until you're like, until you're tired of the guy. Then you're just like, I don't know. I think, LA Knight can beat him. Like, because you think that everything should revolve around whenever you get tired of something. And that's not the way you present a television show.
And you can't, like, a lot of things that get lost in translation with a lot of people, and they don't even realize that they're doing it, is like, you can't have opponents for somebody like Gunther without making those opponents look like they can beat Gunther. So you need to have Gunther not be just completely unstoppable in every fashion, right? Because then if he becomes where it's like nobody can get a hit on him, then why are you watching?
Right.
And then you just want to get to whenever he loses the title. You don't actually want to go through the title reign. It's just the moments. You want somebody to win a title, and then you want to fast forward to when they lose it.
And to be fair, that's WWE's fault, because that's the way that they've conditioned people to think that anything matters. Is, oh, well, the big moment where they win, then they'll eventually lose, and everything else is filler. But you can do things in that filler time that really makes the product overall so much better. And I think Priest's presentation this month has been a great example of that.
It's a Priest to put up a good fight, but he's ultimately going to lose. And that's okay.
Yeah. And I would say this. Again, as a guy that won't be watching, doesn't really have too much of a dog in a fight, but still, I don't want it to be Finn Balor costs Damian Priest.
No, just Gunther should just win.
they're going to go back to that, and we all know it, and there's no point trying to fight it or pretend that otherwise. We know that's where they're going to go, but it shouldn't be the reason why Gunther retains his title, because they already did that. That's how he won the title in the first place. So,
but what if potential new Intercontinental Champion Ludwig Kaiser helps Gunther win, and then Priest has another prize to fight for?
Okay, well, here's the other side, because we talk about the benefits of we can't just make Gunther an unstoppable machine and present all challengers feel like they're super inferior to him. Gunther's great as well, and so you need to actually have him win matches. He shouldn't be a chicken shit heel champion. He's not the Miz. He's not I don't know, like a heel Randy or that kind of thing. He's presented as one of the best wrestlers in the world. So in order for that to happen, he needs to win matches clean. So he should be, he can have that kind of aura and presentation, and you can build Priest up and get a few hits on Gunther and make Gunther look fallible. But at the end of the day, Gunther should be winning matches clean. And Priest, as high as his presentation has been, is still, I think, short of that top main event level where you would have maybe Gunther would struggle a bit more to, in kayfabe terms, defeat a Seth Rollins or a CM Punk of that kind of echelon of babyface, whereas Priest is just on the level below that, so he should be beating Priest clean.
Yeah, and I don't even want them to continue this Finn Balor thing. Every time that they have a backstage segment where it's like this past Monday Night Raw where Finn Balor, which I don't even like Finn Balor being this leader of the Judgment Day anyway. That's already
they're doing.
Yeah, it's not working for me. But on top of that, when they end up having this whole and I'm still mad about Damian Priest, it's let it go. It's not that interesting of a feud to be let's just keep this going for months and months.
Well, I mean, look at how long he held on to his issues with Seth Rollins before finally deciding to attack him in 2023 to do something about it. This man can hold a grudge for however long he wants, apparently.
Too long. Move on. Let's switch to a different thing, and Damian Priest can they could do something with each other in the Royal Rumble if they want. One of them could eliminate the other one or something. That's good enough. We don't need another month worth of them feuding. I wouldn't care whatsoever if they end up having a match at Saturday night's main event. That's not going to mean anything to me. So I think Damian Priest should lose this match clean. No interference from Finn Balor, and then they should just move on. And, Gunther can do some other stuff, and Priest has the Royal Rumble coming up. Maybe they start a feud between Priest and somebody else. I don't know. But, yeah, definitely not super into the idea of Finn Balor interfering and costing him that. The only way I could be okay with that is if they have something so wildly crazy planned for a gimmick that it would be all right, you caught my attention because this is going to be a, I don't know, let's say they bring back the First Blood match where it'd be whoa, you're going in that direction? Okay, then let's see what happens. Or an Inferno match or something. If it's just, we really hate each other and you know what? We're going to fight. Oh, fuck it. Or God forbid they just go, wouldn't it be great if we just have a Miracle on 34th Street fight? Then it's all gimmicky with that and doesn't fit the Judgment Day aesthetic whatsoever. I'm down with Judgment Day itself just splitting up at this point too. I'm over that whole bunch of things. And that kind of goes a little bit into the women's WarGames match a little bit here, because this is something that they are putting out there that can stall at the very least. It's not the reason why they're doing it. It's not just to stall. They're doing it because they wanted to have a women's WarGames match. But it's yet another stall of Rhea Ripley winning that championship back. And when push comes to shove, they need to just do that. And I hope that they do it as soon as possible, because this cannot sustain itself all the way to WrestleMania. I don't know what they could do instead. I still feel like it's not interesting enough to have Io Sky against Rhea Ripley. I really am not the biggest fan of Becky Lynch coming back and fighting Rhea Ripley at WrestleMania, but
I forgot Io Sky is actually entitled to a title match.
And I'd like, to me, that works better as the Royal Rumble match. Just have those two against each other there. Kind of not necessarily get that out of the way, but like, they'll have a good match, but that's not WrestleMania to me. I can't see that being like a feud worthy of being like, I'm super invested into this. It's just going to be one of those things where, all right, let's just skip into Mania, then they'll have a good match. And I really am not the biggest fan of that. So I want Rhea Ripley to win that title from Liv Morgan as soon as possible and to move on to doing other things. But we have this in the meantime. And something that I don't like about this, that they're just glossing over because they're like, fuck it, we don't really want to try to explain it. And can you just go along for the ride and shut up? Is we just had Liv Morgan and Nia Jax against each other. It just happened at Crown Jewel.
Yeah.
They were just like bitterly feuding with each other for nothing. Because the Crown Jewel Championship wasn't something that was like, well, we have to do that. And we have to have it be these two. They could have very easily had Rhea Ripley win that title from Liv Morgan prior to it and had Rhea Ripley versus Nia Jax. And then they could have even continued to have this exact same WarGames match. And it's just Liv Morgan is pissed that she lost the title to Rhea Ripley. And she's even willing to join Nia Jax's team to be like, yeah, because I don't like Rhea and I've got nothing to separate me from Nia Jax because I didn't have that match with her. And I'm like, yeah, realistically, this should have just been that. But okay, the way we have it now is Team Liv Morgan with Raquel Rodriguez, and then the people that they were feuding with, Nia Jax and Tiffany Stratton and Candice LeRae, are up against Rhea Ripley, Team Rhea Ripley, where predominantly more than anybody, the person that's being put on the poster in a higher spot is Bianca Belair, which I think is funny. They're joined by Io Sky, the one member of Damage Control and no other members of Damage Control, who was bitterly feuding with Bianca Belair, but she's cool with her. And Naomi, who she's cool with. And it would have been Jade, but Jade's injured. So now it's Bayley, who Bianca continued to hate more than anybody else for some reason. But since Bayley helped her win the advantage over Nia Jax, now they're going to be cool. So this is a mess in a lot of ways. And there are plenty of people online, I'm seeing it already, just going, oh my God, I'm living for this, hook it up to my veins, all these queens, etc., etc., etc. All right, well, the match itself should be fun. There's going to be moments in there where there's going to be lulls. And then the odd thing is Team Ripley has the advantage, so it doesn't really work super duper well with the baby faces in this.
They do this every year because these idiots have to have 2 WarGames matches, and I'm not knocking the women. It's just like WarGames isn't meant to be done twice in one night. But they do it anyway, and since you can't have both
the heels with the advantage,
yeah, so you're just gonna do it like this. Luckily, you got some big women on that side, so you can do like, oh, now they can gang up on Raquel, assuming Nia's not going in first.
Right.
But it's fine. It's just something I'd rather not see.
Yeah.
Very, very nitpicky.
Now, since nothing is on the line here, it really could be either team. But when I look at this lineup, I'm like, nah, this is the babyfaces winning.
So I think, as you've pointed out, this is a very, very messy, thrown together type of match. I mean, first of all, you mentioned it already, and get the elephant out of the room. Like, there's only one way to do WarGames, and that is the heels have the advantage. That is the one rule of any WarGames match, any equivalent thing. The heels have the advantage. It's always bad when the baby faces have the advantage, because you know they've either got to do some bullshit thing where one of the baby faces gets taken out on their way to the ring or something like that, and so technically the heels still maintain the advantage, or it means that, you know, during the heat spots where it's 2-on-1, it's the baby faces beating up one heel, and it just doesn't make sense, because that's the complete opposite kind of emotion you should be feeling, because you shouldn't be getting like the big pop when someone comes in to save them, and that's a heel person running into the ring. It just doesn't work. It's a completely illogical way of approaching WarGames, and I wish they would stop doing that. Even if they are doing 2 WarGames matches per year, both of them should be starting with the heel one.
I agree with you, but, you know, like, shut up. Shut up and deal with it.
That's how WWE approaches it.
It is, though. It really is. They're just
but it's a Triple H thing, clearly. Like because I say, because obviously NXT came back with the first WarGames matches, and he did those for some of the NXT matches as well. It's clearly he clearly thinks that he can't have both matches be heel starting, because that's that's boring, or we need something different. But there's a set formula to a WarGames match, and he just consistently breaks it.
Why you shouldn't have 2 fucking WarGames? Yeah, I'm not gonna be cranky, but really, like, it's why you shouldn't have 2 WarGames matches.
Yeah. And obviously going to the stupidness about the fact that, like, seemingly both sides have people that should be at each other's throats. But, you know, that again, that's just another Triple H thing of, like, factions who all the people in it seemingly hate each other. So that is kind of...
Well, to be fair, it worked for him. Like,
that's essentially been, that's the Bloodline, and then that's Judgment Day, and then that's seemingly not the White Six just yet, but eventually they'll get there with the White Six. One of them will try and take over.
We always say Shawn Michaels books Shawn Michaels. Maybe Triple H is just sitting there booking Triple H. That's what he did. That was the evolution stuff, the DX stuff, all that.
Yeah. So then we get to the people involved, like, and again, I want to bring up this one because I feel like it's getting close to I can take some kind of victory lap or thing of this, where it's, I noticed that Jade Cargill isn't in this match.
Okay, she's apparently actually hurt.
Sure. She's actually hurt, and she's been taken out of that match for that reason. It's not the fact that they couldn't trust her to actually do a WarGames match where she might have to do more than the 3 moves that she does in every single match.
Well, that'll depend on if we see her pop back up right afterward. If she ends up just being like, all right, we turn around and it's mid-December and she's on TV and wrestling again, then that's going to be extremely suspicious.
Because that's the first thing I told Tony. When they took her out, I was like, they said, fuck her being in WarGames, I guess. Because it made no sense. But apparently, according to Meltzer, and I think Sean as well, she does appear to have a legitimate injury. But I am right there with you of, like, I think they just said no to Jade being in WarGames.
Well, what's the injury supposed to be? Has anybody said anything about that? Because I know that they had like the fake report where it was all like she's got like, you know, lumbar like spine, blah blah, fucking, you know, she lost an ear or whatever, her eyeball exploded. Like, you know, it was like, okay, you're going over the top for that, but clearly none of that stuff is real. It's got to be something else, and I don't remember her having any kind of issues that anybody had reported on ahead of time.
Meltzer's saying 3 months minimum. They're keeping the actual injury very secretive. So he doesn't say what it is. And it's not a well-known injury, but 3 months minimum. That puts her right in line for the Royal Rumble. Puts her right in line for WrestleMania. like being funny here, but a little suspicious. Just a little bit.
I mean, it's definitely at least a little bit suspicious if she ends up being away and they end up being like, we don't need to do anything other than wait to have her do something in the Royal Rumble and whatever. They also took her out of the United States title championship tournament thing, and we already know, and this, you know, it's a spoiler, but like it's not like anybody really cares. We know who is replacing her. It's Lash Legend. It doesn't even matter because Lash Legend doesn't even win that match, so it's effectively kind of pointless. And yeah, with Jade not being in there and not advancing, and Bianca not advancing, then that makes that more interesting going forward, because then you're like, all right, well, maybe they did this for a different reason. Maybe they did it for this reason or that, whatever. I trust more that she's actually injured than that they just pulled her because they didn't trust her to be in the match. But I'm definitely keeping an eye on that idea of like, this is Saturday night's main event. We get Jade Cargill in a match. I'm going to be like, nah, you did that for a fucking reason. Come on.
So I agree solely because I think WarGames is enough of a match where you could hide a lot of the weaknesses. I mean, we've seen Pat McAfee in a WarGames. We've seen Ridge Holland in a WarGames. People do hide their weaknesses in WarGames. I watched the Shockmaster with Tony last year in WarGames, and not great. So it's not like, Jade Cargill couldn't have delivered something.
Yeah, she could have been the last person out there and just did some power moves and
thrown some trash cans at people, beat some people up with kendo sticks.
Yeah.
Done a moonsault, maybe.
But that's the setup that they do have going on here is Bayley coming in and filling in the blank. And worse, there could have been some worse options, but I still wasn't the biggest fan of that whole feud to begin with anyway.
That's another thing about that. So she basically proved herself, quote unquote, to Bianca Belair by helping Bianca cheat to win to beat the heels to get the advantage in the first place. Which again is like, okay, so who is actually the babyface team in this feud? Because it doesn't seem like the babyfaces are being super babyface in this whole scenario right now. But I think that when it gets down to it, and the match itself, I'm sure the match itself will be fine. I don't think it's going to be anything particularly special considering the participants involved. I don't feel like there are some great people in there, like Bianca and Io, the two that immediately spring to mind. But I feel like Liv Morgan will throw herself out a lot, but I don't think that the majority of the people in it are going to make it super exciting beyond like the odd weapon spot, and will jump off the cage like she always does, and so it'll be a fine match. And in terms of the winner, I think that you probably should just have probably the babyfaces win and have Rhea get the pin. I think that's probably the safest way of doing it.
Yeah,
just to immediately establish that she's going to do it. But I think they've sown seeds in this of being like, if you are looking towards like what the match would be potentially at like WrestleMania if Rhea was to win the title back, the seeds they've sown in this one seems to point towards Bianca.
That's what's so weird about this, because it's like they are very clearly pushing Bianca Jade on one front, but then they are trying to tease as much as they can Bianca and Rhea. And I don't know if that's a matter of them being like, let's figure that out as a potential backup plan in case Jade isn't ready to go and we need to do something else, or if they even want to do a triple threat, which would be kind of crazy to me. That's not what I would do whatsoever. And maybe it could just be, well, we really like the idea of perpetually teasing Bianca and Rhea over and over and over again, year to year to year, until we eventually pull the trigger on it. But I don't know. I mean, maybe they have a different plan in mind for Jade, and it's Bianca and Rhea and Jade's going up against Charlotte, for instance, or I don't know, something else. But yeah, it's we're in a weird spot of like a holding pattern where I don't even know if and when they come around to the idea about putting the title back on Rhea Ripley. Nothing's been announced as far as like, oh, and if she were to win this match, then she gets another shot at Liv Morgan. But I do feel like that would be the best way of just doing this is she pins the other team. She, maybe she pins Liv, maybe she pins Rhea, maybe she pins Raquel. Maybe they pin like Candice and they just kind of functionally act like, well, I beat your team, so I deserve to get another shot. And maybe that happens at Saturday night's main event or something.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be opposed to that.
It'd be cool. It's a dumb stipulation because WarGames should have a fucking roof on it. But there is that whole forfeit rule. And it'd be kind of cool if Liv just fucks her team by running for Rhea.
Yeah. I didn't think about that.
Like that's where you're going, and I think it'd be a fun way to at least say you did it once, you never have to do it again, but you use that stupid stipulation in a way that would make sense. And yeah, I think Ripley should get the win here because she should be winning that belt soon. I said on a recent podcast that I'd like to see Liv Morgan do something major at Mania because I think she deserves it. She's held belt all year. But I'd like to see Ripley. If you're going with Ripley, just get it over with. You know what I mean? If you're not, then that's fine. But if you're going with Ripley beating Liv, get it over with.
Yeah, we don't need to make this the Royal Rumble match and have this drag out until February. Tired of that. So I'm going to go, Big Show's gun to my head. I'm going to go women. Match is for the baby faces.
I absolutely think women's matches for the baby faces, and I'm going to say Ripley is the catalyst for victory.
Yeah, I'll say the women's side of the baby faces wins. And I think that Rhea will be the one that gets the pin on someone.
And then we've got what I'm pretty sure assuming is going to be the main event here. I can't imagine it's going to be anything else. The men's WarGames match, which should have been the Bloodline versus the Bloodline, yet accompanying Solo Sikoa, Jacob Fatu, Tama Tonga, and Tonga Loa is, you would assume, maybe they would have brought Hikuleo at this point, and they still didn't. Instead, they brought in Bronson Reed. And to counteract that, you've got Roman Reigns, Jey Uso, Jimmy Uso, Sami Zayn, the Bloodline, the way that they were. And hey, we could get Seth Rollins in there to do a whole thing with wrapping up the story of Roman Reigns and have the Bronson Reed thing. It's unnecessary, but no. Instead, we got CM Punk because Paul Heyman returns and brings Punk in to fight Bronson Reed on behalf of the Bloodline. The fuck? Why did they do this? Why didn't we just do 4-on-4?
Because they've again, it's like I've said this a couple times on this podcast. They pigeonhole themselves into these stupid fucking rules, and it had to be 5-on-5. So you get Punk, and that's cool. He was being teased for the show. People thought he was going to fight Gunther. That might have made a little more sense than him just jumping into the Bloodline thing. But, all right, he's a Heyman guy. He's going to protect Heyman for what they did to him. All right, I can level with you there. Bronson Reed, I can only imagine that they picked him because they said, bro, you look like you are a part of this family. So, that's fine. It's not what I wanted because I would have wanted just 4-on-4 or one of the many other family members. But that's not what we got.
I don't remember if this was you or if it was somebody else, but I think it might have been you. Somebody I was talking to about it was like, how many fucking family members do you have? You could have just picked one of them.
I said you got fucking 50 family members that can all work relatively well.
Yeah. Like you just signed another one. You have 2 of them in the wings right now. Lance Anoa'i and
you signed Lance. Rikishi can still do Rikishi things. He can sting faces. His young son Solo, that's a spot you can do. Like there was options here. There's The Rock, by the way, that guy.
Yeah, the main guy in the whole thing. That would have been like, wow, let's make a real big statement here and have a lot of people tune into this pay-per-view. But yeah, I wasn't expecting The Rock to be a part of this because it's The Rock. Like, what's the likelihood that he's going to wrestle? We don't even know if he's going to wrestle at WrestleMania the way that they've been talking about some of that stuff. But even still, what's the likelihood that he's going to be in a WarGames match of all things? And then, they could have just done 4-on-4. Like, it doesn't change the match. That's the thing that pisses me off about that. It doesn't change anything about the layout. It's not like it's a Royal Rumble where if you cut that down to 15 people, then it ends up being like, all right, well, now it's not as special. It's not as fun. Or if you get like Elimination Chamber for the most part, they've kind of tried to play around with it a little bit, and sometimes it's been okay and sometimes not. For the most part, you kind of need 4 people in pods and 2 people start off. They've done 3 people start off and the 4 people in the pods. That's totally cool. You could have 4 people start off and 4 people in the pods, but you need 4 pods worth of that to have the 4 sections of the actual chamber. You don't need that when it comes to WarGames. They're all locked in a regular cage that doesn't need to have like a certain amount of people in it. Just have the 4-on-4 and just make it that. Like, I don't know what's with this idea about just like it's got to be 5 because it's not even like they want to keep the teams of 5 fight to survive thing. And you can't even argue on top of that. Now, just saying this point, you can't even argue that it's, we want to keep the traditional Survivor Series 5-on-5. Survivor Series has had 3-on-3 and 4-on-4, and I think they had 12-on-3 or something in one time.
And you can't even argue, it's the way we've always done it, because in NXT, the first one they did was 3-on-3-on-3, and then they did 4-on-4, and then
the Undisputed Era stuff, and
so.
Yeah, I don't get why Bronson Reed is in here and then why CM Punk needed to be in here, because if you even try to make the discussion point of we really wanted Punk to be in and we wanted to do something along that line, why Reed? The only way I can imagine that is their plan is that they want Punk and Reed to feud going forward.
That'll somehow get Rollins involved.
And it'll be like Rollins tangential, so that way Punk and Rollins don't get physical with each other, but Punk's got somebody to work with up until Royal Rumble. They could do something with each other at Royal Rumble. Maybe they're both in the Elimination Chamber match, and then by that point we're off the rails and it's just Punk and Rollins. If that's where they go, I'll retroactively look at this and go, okay, well, maybe they at least had a plan they were going. If it ends up just being Reed's in the match for the sake of having Reed in the match, Punk's in the match for the sake of having Punk in the match, then I'm going to be annoyed that it's not just 4-on-4. Now, I like Reed. And, it's not to crap on Reed and say that, I think he's actually going to be one of the best people in this. I'm much more looking forward to when Reed's in here than when Tonga Loa is in the match, When we get into the section of the match that ends up being, 3, 2, 1, and the next person is, and then the cage gets unclasped and it's like, it's Tonga Loa. I'm going to be like, all right, we got to wait for a few more minutes. At least Tama Tonga can be in the cage just going the whole time, and that could be fun.
He's great. I'm looking forward to seeing Reed and Jacob Fatu together as wrecking machines. You know what I mean? I think
Boulder Bros.
I think Reed's a good fit, and I think he even looks like he fits on the team. It's just he don't fit the story. That's my frustration with it. But then outside of all of that, you go, this is going to be shenanigans to high hell.
Oh, yeah.
This is going to be so much.
Somebody needs to get their broom.
So much community theater. You're going to get a lot of talking. You're getting a lot of, acknowledge me. Somebody's betraying somebody. Paul Heyman's probably going to stab Roman in the back. There's a lot here.
Where do you guys think they start and end? Because I was thinking Sami Zayn or Jey Uso is going to start for the babyface team. And their anchor is either Reigns or Punk. I'm leaning more towards probably just Reigns. And it would make sense, I think, if it's Jey Uso starting off against Jacob Fatu.
Since we're going to see it on the Friday beforehand, I don't know if I'd want that. But I can see, as much as I want Tonga in the cage going, yeah, I think he'll start it off with Jey Uso.
I'm thinking he's number 2 to come in. That it's Jacob Fatu and Jey Uso. And then, spoiler alert, Jacob Fatu wins the advantage because you have to do the opposite thing. And that's the way that it should go, like we were just talking about. I think then Tama Tonga or Tonga Loa is number 2 on that front.
I think you send in Tama Tonga second, and then you send Tonga Loa in third, as there's already probably weapons in the ring and stuff, so people aren't too crazy. Like, boo, I hate this guy, get him out of the ring. And then I think Punk probably before Roman, but maybe not. Maybe Punk goes in last and they keep him as injury-free as possible. By the way, what the fuck? Going from Hell in a Cell to WarGames? Quite the jump for CM Punk.
I didn't even think about that, yeah. Hopefully he doesn't get injured.
I think that, I mean, if it was up to me and I had the ability to like book the WarGames match, so I'd want to, I would start with Reigns.
I mean, that'd be fun.
That'd be great.
What I think, I think the whole story is built around the fact that like Reigns needs to prove himself back to the bloodline and to show that like this is an all for one, not an all for one situation anymore. This is like I'm part of the family, and so I'm going to represent us, and I'm going to be the one that's out there for the longest, holding the burden on my shoulders for a lot of it. I think that would, I think it'd be a pretty cool like visual effect of like you expect that either Jey Uso or Sami Zayn is out to step up and take it for the bloodline, but Roman just says no. I'm gonna. This is my fight. So this is our fight, but I'm the center of it, so I'm gonna be the one that starts off first. So, and that'd be like a good way of building up a bit more, legitimate babyface interest in Roman beyond just him being a cool guy, and so that's why people cheer him. So I think that's how I would do it if it was up to me. The likelihood is they probably would Jey Uso or Sami Zayn because they're the most competent wrestlers, and then you put them either with Jacob Fatu or Bronson Reed because they're the most competent wrestlers on the heel side. And Solo won't start. Again, that's just the right thing is that Solo goes in last. Like that absolutely should be the case, but I don't think it should be Solo and then Roman, but that's how they'll do it because that's just how they do things.
So we haven't talked about this yet because I was honestly just thinking about it. Do we think Punk is a swerve? Do we think Punk actually makes it to the match? Or does he get found laid out backstage? And it's like, oh, you can say that was Rollins did that, and then, that could be another thing for their rivalry. Because I just thought of the idea of, like I said, Punk going from Hell in a Cell to WarGames seems out of sorts for what he's been doing since he came back to WWE.
I think that they would run the risk of just pissing people off if they advertise him for that, then they just pull him for it.
Yeah, I doubt that'd be the case because you couldn't. It's not one of those situations where you could find someone that would replace him that would get as big a reaction that he would. If you're gonna do that sort of angle, you need to have someone who's there to replace him that's better. And there's nobody that would get that over Punk. So
yeah, I think at that point, even if they did Rollins, people would be like, "Why didn't you just do Rollins from the start?" But they have
I don't think they'd like that either.
It's not like they haven't done that in the past. They've had people pulled from Elimination Chamber while they go to the ring and stuff. So
yeah, but that was okay. So it's like, yes, they definitely have done that in the past, but we shouldn't be encouraging or expecting them to do bad things.
No, definitely not an encouragement. I'm just saying, like, if as far as predictions go, you can't rule out that something that makes no sense could happen because they've done things that make zero sense, and then when you ask about it, they end up being like, I don't know, we thought it'd be get people talking or something. It's like, yeah, it gets people talking to rag on it because it's shit. What the fuck are you thinking? Like, they've had that kind of stuff before. So, for all we know, this could be one of those things where they're like, we got a great idea for this. All of them are going to be out of the match, and we're going to place them with people from NXT. And, don't you want to see Dante Chen in this instead or something? And then, but they're not going to do that. I think it's going to be as straightforward as just like, You start off with Jay or Sami, and you go one by one. You lead up to the anchors of Solo Sikoa and Roman Reigns. Everybody does their stuff, and at the end of this, I think the heels need to win. And that can counterbalance the baby faces winning the other matches for the WarGames, but I'd like to see them just do Roman versus Solo and get it out of the way. I really don't want that to be at WrestleMania. I don't think it has the legs for it. I think that we need to do the Rock match. There's multiple elements of that. I'm still kind of nervous that the Rock match is going to either be pushed an entire year or that they're going to have the Rock beat Cody and then have that be for the title and stuff. But I really want Rock and Roman, non-title, at WrestleMania 41. Just go ahead and do it. And whether they do Roman Solo at Saturday Night's Main Event, or they do it at Royal Rumble, I just want them to do it and have that be like out of the way. So if they want people talking and they want to do some kind of crazy thing, maybe The Rock shows up here and costs them the WarGames match. Or maybe this is to set up Roman Solo. We definitively want to have that singles tribal combat, fight for the Ulafa type thing. I don't know. But I'm leaning towards Solo Sikoa's team winning.
I think Solo's team is winning. I think Paul Heyman's turning here because there's no denying he came out dressed up like Solo. And he can, maybe Punk is a plant. Maybe Punk's just there to put the knife in Roman's back. And Punk just has to say, I have no allegiance to you. My allegiance is to him. See ya.
It could be that, and their game plan could be, we want to eventually settle this Roman and Rollins thing and have Rollins stay babyface, and we have a heel CM Punk for him to go up against.
And if they don't do any of that, my dream for Mania is not Roman, Rock. I think Rock can fight Cody. I want Roman and Seth. I still think that there's money in he threw away everything to crack Rollins in the back with a chair because he's that damaged from the Shield breakup. I think there's money in that, and that's the way I would like to see them go. I don't think I'm getting that, but I can dream. And I think the show ends with Paul Heyman doing whatever he can to turn on Roman, and then he pulls out the cell phone and says, call the final boss. And people go, oh, and then show's over.
What if, hear me out,
oh boy,
CM Punk turns and it's Paul Heyman's on that side and they're with The Rock and all that other kind of stuff. And Roman's like, damn, man, like, I can't trust Paul Heyman anymore now. I lost the wise man and all. And it comes back around to, you got to make up with Seth Rollins. And it could be like, yeah, well, we both hate CM Punk. And then they do CM Punk and The Rock against Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins. And they end up just doing a slight variation of what we got from the Cody thing, where it's, we are bitter enemies, but you know what? Fuck The Rock. And now that I said that out loud, I'm like, that could be a match at Elimination Chamber or something.
There's a history there. There's a lot there to have fun with.
It could be a thing. I am starting to think that there's something to this idea about a CM Punk heel turn.
And again, it doesn't even necessarily need to be a heel turn. Roman Reigns is a piece of shit. In storyline, this man is terrible. He's done nothing to apologize to anyone that he's hurt. Paul Heyman could just be like, hey, I need a favor from you. I need you to go into WarGames, kick their ass for a little bit because they powerbombed me, and then put the knife in his back because That's my orders from the final boss. And then maybe we've overthought all of this, and Roman just pins Solo and show's over.
It could be. I mean, Roman took a pin in their previous match. Maybe this is just Roman gets the win, and now we're even. And then that sets up a, okay, 1-on-1 type thing. But yeah, I'm going heels winning this one.
Yeah, I'm going heels winning, and I'll say Heyman turns.
Yeah, I think the babyfaces are going to win. So.
Oh, do you really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was listening to you guys talk about the other things. I'm not saying that those things are possible, but I just think that's totally not what I see happening. I just see either Punk or Roman getting a pin on someone that isn't Solo Sikoa.
Tonga Loa. Listen, if they're losing, Tonga Loa is the.
Well, yeah, Tonga Loa, Tonga make most sense to do that for either of them. But I think as soon as you put Punk in there, you want him to be on the winning side of things. I don't think Heyman is turning, because that would be the most nonsensical. Like in a story that has had its own nonsensical moments over the years that it's been going on, that would be the most nonsensical thing about the guy that got triple power bombed by three or four guys that are in the match, and like through an announce table after
Roman once Superman punched. Roman once Superman punched Paul Heyman for just still associating himself with Brock Lesnar, and then they came back around to "I love you, my tribal chief. You're the best."
Yeah, no, that's like they have the nonsensical moments, but I feel like the fact that they went through months and months of his storyline being that he wants Roman back and he's terrified about what this new bloodline is doing, and then them taking him out. I just don't think that it was. I think at this stage now in his career, where I think it's just probably time to have a babyface Paul Heyman.
I agree.
It's just he's been heel for a long time, and he is just a beloved wrestling figure now. It's at the sort of point where, at a certain point, obviously not so much nowadays in terms of his reality, but at a certain point you didn't want to boo Ric Flair as a wrestler because he's just been around for so long, and yeah, he's the dirtiest player in the game, and that was kind of just his whole stick, but you actually just kind of enjoyed it more and just say, oh, that's just Rick being Rick in the ring. If you poke someone in the eye or does none of that, oh, that's just Ric Flair. I think we're kind of at that point with Heyman where people want to chant along with everything that he says and they want to get super invested in that stuff. So why fight it at this point?
I agree with you completely. No. I just think that the seeds are there where they're clearly going with him doing something, because
I think that Punk's. I mean, first of all, I think that Punk's match is going to be against. If that turn is to happen, I don't think it's happening at this show. I think they'll carry it on for a little while and then they'll try and make it more significant at a Royal Rumble or something along those lines. But Punk is probably going to be one that's challenging Gunther next for the world title once Damian Priest is out of the way. So you want to have him win, and he's going to have Rollins at some point, probably at WrestleMania. So you've got to kind of keep that going. So, and I don't think they want to follow him up finally defeating Drew McIntyre for him just being losing side of the WarGames match. And they want to plant seeds in this match as well, having that spot where either they did on SmackDown with Punk and Roman kind of hitting their finishes at the same time. They could probably do a similar spot here because they want to at least sow some seeds of the Punk and Roman match in the future. But I just don't think that's not a short-term thing. That's going to be sometime next year or even the year after. So yeah, so right now I think that they lost the match at Crown Jewel. They'll win the match here. It means that they get to stand as the bloodline. I mean, you can even do something where it's just it's just Jey Uso or Sami Zayn pinning Tonga or Tonga Loa and Roman, and so you still haven't had the visual of Roman pinning Solo Sikoa, and so you can have their match at whether it's Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, wherever they end up doing it. But I think that the babyface is going to win this one.
That's crazy. I think about it now, the idea that it could just end with Jey Uso and Tonga Loa. It's possible. You could also have, Punk gets the win and everybody's overshadowed by Punk. There's a lot there. There's, as much as it's annoying that they keep relying on the idea of, isn't it fun? Isn't it cinema? Like, there is a lot of meat on the bone to where you could see a lot of interesting outcomes coming out of Saturday. I think the most disappointing thing would be if it's just, and Roman won, and he made peace with Punk, and that's just sort of it. You know? Like, that would be very boring. So I'm curious to see where they go with it.
I feel like they probably have some plan. Whether or not we actually enjoy that plan is up in the air, but I don't think that they're going to end it with just like the most flat possible scenario. Certainly could happen. And I guess we're going to find out on Saturday when that comes around. And, you know, if anything happens in the meantime and we get a chance to chat about some alterations to the card or something, then obviously we will. Yeah, we'll probably factor that into the hot tags on Friday if that ends up being the case. And yeah, I mean, we'll see what we do have going ahead. But as far as the pay-per-view point prediction side goes, remember, drop your comments below. Keep in mind, we got to do the post show after the pay-per-view. And if you want to follow everything that's happening on Smark Out Moment, everything that's happening on Fanboys Anonymous, everything that's, you know, on all those different links and stuff that you find, go to the link tree at amangotree.com. You'll find links to all that type of stuff. So follow and favorite or subscribe or whatever it might be on those different platforms. And I'll see you on those. And if you're following me, you should also follow these two guys.
Yep, you can follow me where at Dude Felice. Mostly on Blue Sky these days, but I won't be completely deleting Twitter like I know some people will be. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitch. I have a YouTube channel up under the same name. Just Dude Fleece everywhere, and check out Fightful because that's where you get all the scoops. They're going to have some news coming into Survivor Series for sure, and it should be an exciting Saturday night. But also check out Callum.
You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Wigmeister14. You can check out the Power Rankings every single Saturday over on smartcomemo.com, where I rank the WWE superstars based on their previous week's performances. And Survivor Series, the results of that will win for the Fantasy League, in terms of whoever gets the most predictions will be able to make some updates to potentially their roster and their opponent's rosters, depending on who wins it. So make sure you stay tuned with that over at Smartcom and also at WWEFantasyLeague.com to see all the latest rankings and standings and how we do as we go into and come out of Survivor Series.
Okie dokie, everybody. Follow that Fantasy League stuff like we just said. Follow the Discord. Follow all this marketplace stuff. Check out that upcoming AEW versus WWE thing at some point when we record that. Check out the Raw versus NXT versus SmackDown thing that is already up there on the Darkcast.
I do think it's only fair to warn you guys, if you do check that out, that's like the first hour. The next
then there's just like, you know, random stuff after that.
The next 30 minutes is just us talking.
Yeah, that's Darkcast material, but yeah, follow all that stuff and also stay tuned for everything else we said that's coming your way. So adios for now. This has been another Smark Out Moment, and we are being counted out.